Hello everyone. Hopefully some of you already know me and Nicholas. I've been around the Wikiverse for many years, particularly in the GLAM sector, cultural partnerships activities. And for the last few years, I've been working with the Wikimedia Enterprise team, which I hope has also been, you may recall, in previous editions of this conference. And yesterday, our colleague Harun talking about that work. But this is the commercial scale API service with SLAs and so forth. Recently, I've moved and joined with Nicholas to reform a team inside the Wikimedia Foundation called Technical Partnerships, which is potentially relevant to some of you in the audience here directly, and otherwise an interesting direction of travel in general to try and provide proactive services or relationship management to organizations outside Wikimedia who are using Wikimedia content. So this is not MediaWiki, it's Wikimedia content, Wikipedia, Wikidata, etc. Proactively trying to form a relationship with those organizations in the ecosystem of free knowledge, rather than simply saying, as we have always done in the past, it's free, go, full stop. Hopefully this is a bit more productive than that sort of generic advice of it's free and the documentation's on Meta. And is hopefully also an acknowledgement that at least 50% of hits to Wikimedia content are from people scraping and copying content to use elsewhere. So most of the people who are reading Wikimedia content are not reading it on Wikipedia or on Wikidata or on Commons. And those people should be counted as real people too, as real customers, as real relationships. I'm not sure my face is floating on top of this slide, but this is roughly where we sit inside.
Williams, we send my screen, you're still on the home, like the introducing tech partnerships first slide.
Maybe it takes a minute for it to upload. I'll try and just share normal screen rather than a hovering screen.
Oh, but the hovering one was so fun. But yeah, this is working now.
Okay. Is it just the screen and not my face anymore?
Unfortunately.
Oh, boo. Okay, well, we'll just have to imagine this. So this is where Nicholas and I sit inside the Wikimedia Foundation, alongside Enterprise, but not part of it. So obviously a lot of content reuse platforms and external relationships, particularly the big ones, you Googles of the world, are also enterprise customers. So they're paying for service level agreements, they're paying for customer support at midnight, that kind of thing. But this is not necessarily, there's an overlap, but not a complete overlap. It's a Venn diagram. We live in the advancement department, which is the, broadly speaking, money in and money out team. And talk quite closely with comms, tech, legal, etc. We are both in Europe. This is the last bit for me for a minute, and then we'll go up to Nicholas can speak to the next few. The point here is pulling out from the strategic direction, which some of you will be intimately familiar with from the Wikimedia movement, the phrase that Wikimedia will become the essential infrastructure of the knowledge. So when we're speaking about indirect users, which is a phrase that comes from that same strategy recommendation that the Wikimedia Foundation look to and improve the user experience of indirect users, that is people who are accessing Wikipedia, etc., not on Wikipedia itself, then the infrastructure in that context is the Enterprise API and the datasets that come there. And so we are the new assistants of that ecosystem. And ecosystem is important word there because not everything in a healthy ecosystem is your friend. Some of them might be predators, but you still necessarily have to have a relationship with them, and that's okay. There's symbiotic relationships, there's more or less predatory relationships, but you still need to deal with them in a healthy ecosystem. That's what we're trying to do. Nicholas.
Yeah, I think so. Within that broader context, our team's main focus is on this idea of content reuse. So that's just what we call it when other platforms ingest and resurface Wikimedia content. The way we like to shorthand, have people think about it, is just to think about how most people who are familiar with Wikipedia today probably learned about it through a Google search, either as a link or through the knowledge panel. And this type of content reuse drives billions of page views back to the Wikimedia projects. And WMF depends on this, and our projects depend on this in a lot of ways to solicit new contributors. We often refer to this process as the flywheel, which many of you are probably also familiar with. You go to the next slide, please, Dave.
Trying to.
Oh,
there you go.
Thanks. Yeah, so then today, new products like voice assistants, social media platforms, and of course, AI search tools are really changing this dynamic between the projects and content reusers. But that is to say, some of the largest companies out there, so like William said, Google, Apple, TikTok, OpenAI, and so on. And we're actually quite happy to see this diversification in the places where people go to find information online. But it does also mean we need to invest more in proactively influencing the way Wikimedia content is suggested, displayed, and attributed off-platform. AI search products in particular are repackaging Wikimedia content in ways that do not necessarily offer the same reciprocal benefits that we have become used to in the flywheel, namely high volumes of referral traffic. And I guess the concern would be that this could lead to a decline in contributions to the projects over time, which is illustrated in this graphic here. So on the left is sort of the flywheel we are used to. Somebody may encounter Wikimedia content offline, say in a search engine, that's the consumption phase. Ideally, they would join the community in some regard. That would either directly or indirectly lead to more content being created, which would then be ingested and consumed off-platform, sort of keeping that flywheel going, and most importantly, keeping that flywheel symbiotic. The thing we are trying to avoid is the sort of alarmist graphic on the right, where folks stay in the consumption phase, which is to say they're not prompted or encouraged to go to the Wikimedia projects and contribute back in some regard. And that might be because of the way the product is designed, or simply because there's just no attribution about where the content they are consuming came from in the first place. So in short, to summarize, our team is working on sustaining this reciprocal value exchange between the Wikimedia projects and large-scale reusers. Obviously via partnerships and relationships. Something we try to focus on is how can we do this proactively rather than reactively, which I think has been a shift over the years in the foundation, which we are both excited about. And like we mentioned before, we want these to be symbiotic rather than just extractive relationships, which many of them have been in the past. And we do this just through working with WMF teams, peer organizations, and broader movement.
I think this is back to me now again, is it?
Yes.
Okay. So there we go. So we are trying to divide this potentially quite large concept of external partnerships. What does that mean? Into two rough areas, noticing that they're not distinct, like there's an overlap. As I said, this is a Venn diagram. So on the one side, Nicholas is primarily working on the high volume reuse partnerships. This is the AI companies, this is the search engines. These are the ones who are taking mass scale content, and we're trying to work out how to do that appropriately, with better attribution, with more friendly behavior from their scraping services, which you'll have seen hopefully recently. Wikimedia Foundation has been putting out more proactive messages saying, hey world, it's the content's free, but the infrastructure that you're abusing is not. So that's one thing, trying to shift that kind of conversation. And my focus is more on what you might call mission-aligned partnerships, movement friends of the movement, friends and family, and how can we use this infrastructure that has been built up for large commercial organizations and make sure it's available and usable productively by anyone. It makes no sense to divide Wikimedia users and reusers by who you are. The same thing on Wikipedia. No one cares who you are. If you're a dog on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. In Wikimedia, we don't care if you're an expert or if you're a commercial organization. We should not ask, as an API provider, are you using this for commercial purposes? Because that goes against the concept of the free license. Right? You just use it. what we're charging for in those APIs is the value-add services like customer support and SLAs that say 99.99 whatever uptime, and you can sue us if we don't achieve that. That's a value-add service. The actual content, use it. It's an API. It's a data set. So how can we make sure that movement-aligned, strategically important partners in our ecosystem, some of whom might be in the room here today, can also know exactly what they can leverage with this infrastructure. A content reuse partnership. So back to you, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think so. Sort of double-clicking into the left side of that Venn diagram. So content reuse partnerships are part of our focus. And at the moment, we're thinking about that in three ways primarily, in no particular order. First is diversifying the reach of Wikimedia content. It's just trying to make sure we're getting referral traffic back to our platform, back to the projects from a variety of sources, so we're not too dependent on any single source, especially now as the internet landscape is shifting more rapidly than maybe it has in the past few years. Secondly, we are working with these existing partners to maintain the high volume of referral traffic, so while the ecosystem is shifting, it's not shifting overnight, and it's still important for us to maintain the relationships we do have and the sort of bread and butter volumes of traffic we're receiving from places like Google, let's say. This can take a lot of different forms. It can be, working with, again, say Google to modernize the way that they are resurfacing Wikimedia content so that it's more in line with their products and thus more appealing to their consumers in the formats that it's shown. It's also working with more maybe mission-aligned or smaller organizations that can be nimble and experiment with us to understand how Wikimedia content is showing up in places like RAG search engines. How does attribution play a role in click-through rate in those environments? And sometimes it's just working to help resolve bugs rather. So this can be maybe Google flags something for us, or a voice assistant company flags something for us. Maybe a WMF team lets us know that there's something broken on the back end that's affecting content reuse. Or maybe a member of the community reaches out to us and says that they noticed something is wrong with how a search engine is displaying some of their work. And then the third bit that we've been putting a lot of attention on lately, sort of to Liam's point, is co-developing and implementing criteria for when a high-volume content reuser ought to move to the Wikimedia Enterprise infrastructure. And again, this just ensures sort of a financial and technological fairness and sustainability in our relationship. And then I guess one more thing to note on here is that over time, a partner or a company can move across these 3 points or be in all of them even. Often we'll see a partner who is maybe newer to using Wikimedia content or resurfacing Wikimedia content in, say, their search product. We will hold their hand a little bit as they start to understand it and realize its value. It usually corresponds with how much they're using it, and that can occasionally lead to them becoming a Wikimedia Enterprise user.
Whereas on the right-hand side of that Venn diagram, go back to that original quote about the ecosystem, the essential ecosystem, infrastructure of the ecosystem of free knowledge. The second half of that phrase is, and anyone who shares our vision will be able to join us. So who is that? I kind of came up with 3 different bird species examples, avian examples. This is how it worked out in my mind. So we have cousin species, organizations who are functionally they're not Wikimedian, but they're really damn close. And we share the same lineage in open source or crowdsourcing, in free licensing, that kind of thing, in community control and advocacy of content moderation. Clearly, we need to work closer together, fly together. There's symbiotic species. You might have seen like those stories of birds or even fish that they help each other. They hunt together. They're not the same species. They're not necessarily friends, but they have a symbiotic relationship when they're in the wild together. And there's also a third category even of, here's a bunch of organizations, or a bunch of birds who feed together, who are yes, I can see you giggling there, Nicholas, in the video. It's a weird metaphor, run with it. Organizations who are potentially being preyed upon by other groups, other species, and they stay together for mutual defense and support, which could very well be a lot of organizations in this new AI landscape, and just as the internet changes in general. That is us. We would like to say, please contact us if you want. We are the Tech Partnerships team at Wikimedia Foundation, aka the business team at Wikimedia. Wikimedia is not famous for doing business, and we don't want to take ourselves too seriously as we do learn how to do it.
Thank you guys. Nice. That's very interesting. Oh, here, let me move over. Actually, it doesn't matter. Thanks, guys. Really interesting talking to, I mean, not to be too dramatic, but it sort of feels like ultimately like a life and death thing that you guys are doing, both for, in a positive and a negative sense. Maybe that's too dramatic, I don't know. Probably the Wikimedia Foundation is fine regardless. Oh.
Enterprise and partnership, sorry. One of the things we say about partnerships, particularly the more commercial side of them, which I emphasize is not exclusively what we're doing here, is Wikimedia has spent 2 decades learning how to exist in 300 different languages, and now we're learning how to speak capitalism too.
Deep. Yeah, I get it. Does anyone have any questions? I have a question. I mean, if I understood the Venn diagram, Nicholas's domain is fairly obvious, with companies like Google, OpenAI, etc. But your description with the birds and everything, Liam, seemed a little more nebulous. Are there any examples of organizations that would fit in those categories that you can mention?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be able to say specific examples if we haven't got like a contract or something that I don't want to embarrass some organization that we're not agreed upon. But for example, I think it would be fairly obvious to say we should work more closely with OpenStreetMap.
Interesting, yeah.
That makes sense. That's an obvious organization who has a lot of relationships, a lot of overlapping community. I think we should also be working with iNaturalist, which is something you'll be familiar with. This is a website, a service where you can take photographs of plants and say, what is this plant? And the community will help identify. A lot of those images get uploaded to Commons, and there's a lot of community in both Wikimedia Commons and iNaturalist who overlap those two communities. There must be some things we can do technically to support each other. And if that shades across into community support, there's another team at the Wikimedia Foundation who does regional partnerships and content creation partnerships. That is also our chapters, our volunteer groups around the world. The Wikimedia Foundation doesn't do content creation partnerships. That's a community activity. But if it helps these external organizations, that we can say, here's an API platform, we can give you a high-speed feed because we're friends, and you want to be able to have little pop-up boxes about diseases if you're a medical community online, or if you're plants, if you're a biology community online, or spaceships and asteroids if you're at NASA, for example, then we should help provide that infrastructure in a way that's supportive to you, not just, it's on Meta, the documentation's available, and go forth. That's not sufficient anymore.
Yeah, and you're getting appreciative nods from the audience. That I think people understand the vision. I have another random question. There was a big contest like a year or two ago to get a sound for smart speakers whenever they get you an information from Wikipedia or something. What's going on with that? I haven't heard the sound yet.
Nicholas?
Oh yeah, for the sound logo. Something we're thinking a lot about, I alluded to it vaguely at one point in the presentation, is how to increase attribution in these new formats. The trick is with a lot of the common Creative Commons licenses, the threshold for what is like acceptable attribution is sort of subjective and permissive on these platforms. So the thing William and I are trying to focus a lot on in the coming, say, 6 months or years, how can we make a stronger business case for these platforms to incorporate attribution? The sound logo being hopefully an exciting or useful way for them to do that. But to be honest, though, like over the last couple of years, a lot of it has been the foundation asking for better attribution by our definition, and companies saying, like, we will consider it, or we will try to put it on the roadmap. But what William and I are trying to make a business case to say, better attribution drives X% increase in contribution to the project, which is ultimately good for your platform following the flywheel. And I think the sound logo is something we can have in our arsenal for when we have those conversations in a more meaningful way, but we're trying to shift some of that attention actually back onto the foundation's product teams to investigate what that referral traffic looks like and how it's affected by better attribution. But hopefully we'll be seeing the sound logo in more places as a result of that.
Awesome.
I think you said you had never heard the sound logo that won the competition.
I've heard it, but not from a speaker.
Out in the wild.
Okay, yeah, out in the wild. It's difficult to convince them because the licensing is free. There's no contractual obligation that you use this specific attribution format. In most cases, they'll use the easiest thing. And so if we're coming in saying, please do a new thing, please do a thing that's more complex technically and orally, we don't have because the licenses are free, we don't have a way to force that upon them. We can only politely cajole them. And so it's a question of not attribution by demand, but attribution by saying this is an improved user experience from listeners to your smart speaker system if they get this, rather than nothing or minimalistic attribution. But if you're building complex service, then you'll just do the minimum possible. Our job is to try and make it all the minimum.
Great, good luck to you with that and with your future endeavors, and thanks for presenting. Thank you. Bye guys.